Call meeting in order. Paul, do
Right.
the roll, please.
Commissioner Evans?
Here.
Commissioner Slivka?
Here.
Commissioner Kosarog?
Here.
Commissioner Debates?
Here.
Commissioner Rittenhouse?
Here.
Chairman Sept.
Here. Okay, so obviously we have new people here, so I want to formally thank John and Terry for joining the commission and look forward to working with you guys going forward. It's going to be very interesting. And then I also wanted to mention the 4 people that were on the commission that are no longer with us, Fred, Mike, Cindy, and Ron. I worked with them for a number of years. They were wonderful. We had a great working relationship with everybody. They served the city very well, and I really appreciate their time. Okay? So next item on the agenda is the Plan Commission minutes for July 25th, 2019.
Move to approve?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and the second item is the Zoning Board of Appeals minutes for July 10th, 2019.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay. So next item on the agenda is we have a new name, so we need a bylaws adjustment, right? So that's basically what it is, David?
Really, it was the name change from the Plan Commission to Planning and Zoning Commission, and then the number of members being reduced from 9 members down to 7 members. So that's really the bulk
crux of the matter.
Bulks of the changes in the bylaws. If there's any questions, we can go through those. If not, that was it.
Any questions?
We need a motion to
Yeah, we
approve.
need-
Motion to approve the bylaws?
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Then the next item is overview of the variation procedures. So David's going to give us a quick little rundown on that process.
All right. I just wanted to take a few minutes to go over this procedure because I know it's similar to other processes that the Plan Commission followed. It's slightly different. It's mostly the same for ZBA members with a few small tweaks, so just wanted to go through them very quickly. The purpose of a variation is to relieve a particular hardship or difficulty that the regulations of the zoning ordinance impose on a piece of property, which make compliance with the regulations that are generally applicable to other properties in a zoning district either extraordinarily difficult or impossible. That doesn't mean that any regulation in the zoning ordinance can be varied. There are a list of 9 variations that are eligible for consideration. The first is to permit any setback less than a setback required by the applicable district. So that's one of the variations we'll be considering tonight, to reduce the side yard setback. The next is to permit the use of a lot for a use otherwise prohibited because of insufficient area or lot width. So, for example, if a lot wasn't large enough to be considered a buildable lot, you can grant a variation to allow that lot to be considered buildable, provided that that lot at least meet 80% of the required lot area or lot width. To increase by not more than 20% the maximum gross floor area of any use limited by the applicable regulations. So it's mostly in residential districts, you have a maximum floor area that is allowed for a piece of property. You can vary that, but again, by no more than 20% of the maximum allowed. So that's again one of the variations we'll be considering this evening. To permit the use of a yard that's otherwise prohibited. So this could be, for an example, an accessory structure is not permitted to be in a street yard. You can grant a variation to allow the use of that yard to allow an accessory structure. Just best example I can think of for that one. To reduce the applicable off-street parking or loading facility requirements, again by not more than 20%, so you could reduce the number of parking spaces required for development, but you have to meet at least 80% of the requirement. To increase the maximum height requirement of a district, to allow a building to be taller than otherwise allowed. Same for fences. You can vary the requirements of the traffic and access regulations, so those, it's like your drive aisle widths, parking stall dimensions, curb cuts, the width of a curb cut at the right-of-way line, you can vary those regulations. And then to increase the maximum lot coverage ratio, so the amount of impervious surface or anything that's not green space really on a zoning lot, you can increase that percentage. Any questions on those eligible variations? Sure.
Can you just, the one that you just said was kind of hard to explain, the permit the use of yard otherwise prohibited. I didn't quite get that one.
So certain uses aren't permitted in some yards. Like you couldn't put a shed in your front yard.
Okay.
But if you had a unique situation where your house was all the way out the rear lot line and there was nowhere else to go with an accessory structure, and you can make a case that it was reasonable use of your property to have a shed in the front yard,
Okay.
you could grant a variation to allow an exception for that property.
Got it. Thank you.
So the procedure for a decision is very similar to what we're all accustomed to. The Planning and Zoning Commission holds a public hearing on the application. At the public hearing, all interested parties have an opportunity to be heard. We follow the same procedures we always have. We post a sign on the property, post it on the city's development maps page. We do a mail notice to property owners within 500 feet. We do a published notice in the Daily Herald. And then we conduct the public hearing as we always have. One of the differences here is that the Planning and Zoning Commission will be a recommending body to the City Council, where previously the Zoning Board of Appeals was the deciding body, and if there was an appeal of that decision that went to Circuit Court, it did not go to the City Council. But in this case, the Planning and Zoning Commission will continue to be a recommending body. The state statute does provide for that, and we thought it was just simpler to follow one procedure for this consolidated commission instead of having two separate procedures. So then, after the close of the public hearing, the commission has up to 45 days to make their vote. If they don't vote within 45 days, the application is deemed to be denied or recommended for denial. And then the City Council ultimately has the authority to grant or deny the request. Similar to, I know our former ZBA members are familiar with these standards, but similar to cases like for a special use permit or a PUD, we have standards that we consider. We have standards for variations, and this is really how the applicant makes their case to the commission, how staff evaluates a request, and ultimately how the commission should be evaluating a request. The first standard is reasonable return. The property in question cannot yield a reasonable return if permitted or used only under the regulations of the district in which it is located. So just trying to think of an example here. If you have a two-car garage that's maybe non-conforming, doesn't meet the side yard setback requirement, and it's destroyed by a fire or natural disaster, and you want to rebuild that garage in place, there's really nowhere else on your property to go, but you need a variation to do that. Is that a reasonable return to have the expectation of a single-family home as a two-car garage? There's probably a million other examples, but the idea is that you're getting your economic investment back out of the property, which would also be expected out of any other property in the district. Reasonable return has also been kind of stretched and upheld through some case law, that it can be considered reasonable use of the property. So I guess I'm struggling to think of a clear example there, but is it reasonable to have a two-car garage or three-car garage or a swimming pool on a single-family property? Is that reasonable use of your property? You're not asking for a 9-car garage, that's blowing out the backyard and increasing the lot coverage. The next standard is unique hardship or practical difficulty. The shape, topography, or other conditions of the land is such that it's extremely difficult to comply with the regulations applicable to the property. So this could be just a really odd lot configuration, not a nice rectangle. It could be extreme topography on the site where it just slopes off and you wind up with a need for a variation in building height. Other conditions could be the existing improvements on the property. Because we're an older community, we have a lot of structures that were constructed well before the current zoning regulations and are non-conforming to those regulations, and that can impose a hardship or a difficulty. when moving forward with the construction project. The character of the area. The applicant must show that the variation will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the enjoyment, use, and development of property or improvement permitted within the vicinity. And that character of the area definition or description goes on, but it goes on to talk about impacting adequate air, light to your neighbors, not increasing traffic congestion on the public streets, not creating any concerns for fire or flood or anything of that matter with the requested variation. And then finally, it's the minimum variation. Any variation considered by the commission should be the minimum variation necessary for the reasonable use. So if we go back to the example of the two-car garage that was destroyed and they want to replace that garage, they're asking for the same setback relief that was necessary to use the existing foundation, or they're not taking this opportunity to ask for the relief to get a four-car garage that they've always wanted on the property. It's the minimum variation needed for the reasonable use of the property. Any questions on those standards? So, as we've always done, we will continue to draft a written findings of fact for the commission's consideration. Staff bases our analysis on the application, and we provide that analysis for your consideration. We don't provide a strict recommendation in our reports because the public hearing has not taken place. The public hearing is an opportunity where additional evidence may be provided. We ask the applicant to prepare a response to those standards as well. So you can either choose to adopt staff's findings of fact, you can adopt the applicant's finding of fact, you can modify them as you see fit based on the testimony that was received during the public hearing. And again, you have 45 days to make your recommendation, so if you feel like you've taken in a lot of information and would like to modify those findings of fact but don't want to do it on the fly, you can postpone your recommendation to the following meeting, and we can try to draft findings based on the discussion of the commission. Then you can adopt those at the following meeting. But it is important that we, in our motions to approve or to deny a variation, we are clearly addressing those four standards in our motion, again, for approval or denial. So if a case is challenged, it's important to understand why it was denied by the commission. So if you feel like you're going to vote no, it's good that you explain that on the record. It might not be the consensus of the group to modify the findings, but it's good if you're voting no to express which standard you feel it doesn't meet, so that much is clear if a case is challenged and moves forward. The Planning and Zoning Commission can recommend conditions on a variation that would eliminate any adverse effects on adjacent and nearby properties or in the neighborhood. And that condition would be forwarded to the council, and if it's adopted, it has to be placed in the approval ordinance. And finally, if a variation is approved, it's required to be recorded with the Kane County Recorder of Deeds prior to us issuing a building permit. We do that because we want to make sure that it is recorded against the property because it does run with the land. So once a variation is granted, it's granted forever for that piece of property, and we want to make sure that it's recorded against the property so a future homeowner doesn't come back and request a variation not knowing that one had already been approved. So that's kind of variations in a nutshell. If there's any questions, happy to answer them. Oh.
No?
Okay.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Okay, so next item is the actual public hearing, so we put it in practice. So it's a public hearing for the Kuhn Building Addition and Zoning Lot Division. The applicant is requesting two variations. The first variation is a section from section 11-5C-4B, setback requirements in the R1 low-density single-family residential district to allow a 9.2-foot side yard setback instead of the required 12-foot side yard setback. And then the second variation request is from section 11-5C-4F, maximum floor area in the R1 low-density single-family residential district to increase the allowable floor area by 20%, 905 square feet, for the purpose of adding onto an existing home. And the location is 516 Peck Road, and Steve Kuhn is the applicant. Yes. Oh, David, you have the...
Yes. I have the contents of the file, just to read them into the record. We have an application prepared by Steve Kuhn dated August 30th, 2019. A letter of intent describing the variations submitted by the applicant. A response to the variation standards submitted by the applicant. A plat of survey prepared by Dale Floyd Land Surveying dated February 8th, 2019. A proposed site plan, floor plan, and elevation. A zoning compatibility worksheet dated August 30th, 2019. A memo from the Community Development Department to the Planning and Zoning Commission summarizing the request and providing a staff analysis. A certificate of publication from the Daily Herald for the legal notice that was published on September 11th for tonight's meeting. And then a copy of the notification letter mailed to all property owners within 500 feet for tonight's meeting.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Kuhn, we'll hear from you.
This is my first go of this, so I apologize if I'm not clear. One of the things that I realize that maybe I'm not in the submission based on Dave's response, my submission of variances or the standards of variances probably wasn't as crisp and clear based on what you put together. So hopefully maybe I can clear some of that up tonight. And but what I did is I prepared a little bit of a presentation, hoping it's kind of my crutch, to be honest with you. And hopefully, if you bear with me, I can go through this and give you a little bit more background and what some of the challenges that I've experienced in the process of trying to make this place shine again is what I have been trying to do. Let's see if I can drive this thing okay. Okay. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with this house on Peck Road. Prior to my purchasing it, was under the same ownership since the mid-'60s. And I think the family, the person I purchased it from, actually owned it since the 40s. So I don't know, I didn't know the owner. In fact, the owner had already moved to Florida by the time I bought it, so I never met the owner, previous owner. But the house had not been really touched, I'd say, in probably since they moved in. It's very, very, very dated and very, 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 very tired. So it needs even more work than I've anticipated. A little bit of background. The property itself was subdivided into two distinct parcels back, and from what I found, it was 1906, and it's known as the Peck Brothers subdivision. There's two separate lots that were divided again back in 1906. Lot 14 is the vacant lot, and that's 17,560 square feet. It's got its own PIN number, to pay taxes on it separately, etc. Lot 15 is where the house is. It's 18,406 square feet. The main portion of the house was moved to Lot 15 in 1906. That information I collected from the HPC when the Historic Preservation District was trying to make the southern area a historic district. And unfortunately for me, my process got delayed because I got caught up in that process, and for about 7 months I couldn't really do anything on the outside of the property. So that information of 1906, the property was moved from there. I have no idea where it was moved from, but it was moved to that Lot 15. The house has gone through at least 3 visible additions over the years, and the reason why I can say that is because I have done some internal demolition and have found that just through opening some things up, there was a whole rear addition to the house, because you can tell when you open things up, it's like, whoa, that's interesting. This is totally different than this. Foundations look different, things such as that. the front entrance of the property was an addition, because under the front entrance of that property is actually a newer constructed, probably, when I say newer, it might be the 40s or 50s, but it's, the front entrance is actually under a crawl space versus a basement. And then the screened-in porch, which is to the, when you're facing the property, it's to the right. At some point in time, again, I have no idea when, that appears from construction, it appears to be an addition. The house itself, it was in disrepair when I purchased it, but now it's even in more disrepair since I've started the process of trying to rehab. Minimal maintenance and updates had been done to the house over the years. The existing detached garage and pool, there's a built-in pool that probably hasn't been opened up in 20 years, I would say. And there's a detached garage that there's more critters living in there than I hate to imagine. But so the garage, the detached garage and the pool are in very poor condition, and my plans are to demolish those if I can get the variances to do what I want to do in terms of an attached garage to the property. So the opportunity, I recognized the opportunity to restore this house back to its original character while also updating to meet today's lifestyle and needs. So I not only wanted to keep the character, but I wanted to, add air conditioning. I want to, add new plumbing. I want to update the electrical. I want to do these things, and it really, really, really needs it. But I saw that as a challenge, and in the past I have done this. My father was in the building business when I was a young kid, and I've always had interest in doing this. My main business is printing. I'm a print broker. I've had a business here in Geneva for 15 years. But my passion is taking basically a rundown property and trying to bring it back to life. And that was and is my desire here. So my interests and plans were to be able to purchase this property at a reasonable price, sell the vacant land, which is really key in this whole process, was to sell that vacant land and use those proceeds to help pay the expenses to restore the existing house. I met with the city, initially with Dave, prior to purchasing the property, to determine if the vacant lot was a buildable lot. I thought I was doing my due diligence to determine that this lot is a buildable lot, because the whole process wouldn't make sense, for me at least, unless I can sell off the already divided vacant lot and use that money to go ahead and do the rehab. I was informed by the city that Lot 14 was a buildable lot, providing the encroachments were coming from Lot 15 were removed, namely the patio that encroached on Lot 14, the pool, and the fence. Dave and I have a difference of recollection in that meeting to some degree, and that is what I recall was simply the encroachments needed to be removed in order to be able to have a buildable lot. So after confirming with the city that Lot 14 was a buildable lot, I proceeded to purchase the property at a negotiated price, which wasn't cheap. So the challenges, what challenges have I come across in this process? So after purchasing the property, I had my architect measure and draw existing floor areas and preliminary floor plans for an attached garage addition. And that's the main objective here from a construction exterior standpoint, was to eliminate the detached 2.5 type car garage and put an attached garage off the back of the property that would not be visible from the street. I was informed by my architect that the existing house and garage actually exceeded today's maximum floor area for Lot 15. That caught me a little bit by surprise. I then met again with the city to discuss the attached garage addition and how to reconcile the current non-conforming floor area and the proposed addition. It was a surprise to me that the city now informed me that the existing house's floor area is conforming, since lots 14 and 15 are recognized as a single zoning lot. And that meeting was the first time maybe Dave thinks he said it, but that's the first I recollect hearing that. So I didn't even know what that meant. What do you mean a single zoning lot? I thought I had a buildable lot if I moved the encroachments. And Dave said, no, it's a single zoning lot. And what does that mean? Well, your house is conforming because it's using lot 14 to make 15, the house on lot 15, conforming. So I was like, okay, what does that mean? What do I do now? So this new information has put my plans in jeopardy as lot 14 is no longer buildable, contrary to what I originally believe I was told, even after I removed these encroachments. Additionally, after purchasing the property, the city informed me that the side setback, which is the screen porch addition, again probably done in the early 1900s, was non-conforming with today's zoning laws. If you look at lot 14 and lot 15 separately, that just the screened-in porch portion of the house is 9.2 feet from lot 14 property line, and it's supposed to be 12 feet in today's zoning. But I'm sure when the house was built, I think it was 8 feet. But so that was an issue, and that kind of is one of the variances that why I'm asking for that variance. But I'll try to cover that a little bit more in detail. In effect, this is now how this has created a problem with my ability to sell lot 14 as a buildable lot, and I do actually have a potential buyer, and I've been trying to hang on to him, Dave, for a while, for lot 14, but everything's kind of pending on what I can do here. So what are the solutions? So after several discussions and emails with Dave and Eric, it was determined that my only solution in my mind, and I know Dave threw out some other ideas that didn't really work with what I was trying to do. So they said, really your solution is to apply for variance and hopefully receive approval to move forward with restoring this house. So the two variances are a side setback and a floor area variance. So the side setback, the pre-existing west side screen porch structure on lot 15 is 9.2 feet from the property line that divides lot 15 and 14. Currently zoning requires 12 foot. Sorry, I'm repeating myself. So I'm requesting that the pre-existing 9.2 feet west side screen porch side setback be an accepted variance. The other issue is floor area, and I'm going to digress just real quickly here. For those of you that know the house, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. It's a very tall house. And again, I'm not proficient in all the zoning and building codes and everything else, but you learn through these situations. And based on how Geneva building code is, the way you measure floor area puts a tall house in kind of an awkward position, because these are 12-foot ceilings, almost 12-foot ceilings on the first floor. And one of the things that, and I have a picture of this too, or a sketch of this, the existing house has several flat roofs, but the flat roof on the back of the house is 3 inches, the top of the roof is 3 inches above 20 feet. So what that is making me do is I have to count non-livable space because of 3 inches. Because that roof sits, the 20-foot mark is here and that roof sits here, there's about 175 square feet that is basically non-livable space, and it's all thick roof material. It's not anything, there's no attic or anything. I have to count that as square footage. So that's like, oh, again, I'm learning this. I'm going, oh my gosh, really? I mean, how is that? I figure you take a tape measure and you walk around the house and you measure it and there's your square feet. But no, that's what I've learned is not how you do it. So the floor area for this particular lot, 15, the square footage of the lot is 18,400 square feet. And so the floor area allotment is 4,227 square feet according to the charts and stuff that I've seen. But I get a 300-foot attached garage bonus for an allowable square feet of 4,527 square feet. The total proposed floor area is 5,432, and the only addition that I'm talking about here is a garage. It's an attached garage, and the house, because of the roof lines, you have to have like a transition space of about 10 feet, and there's some basement stairs that are a huge problem right now with leakage because it's somewhat exposed. So I need this transition room. So it's this small transition room to the garage is what really accounts for what I'm trying to do here. No other part of the house itself am I looking to add on to or change or anything. It's just this rear garage with a side entrance is what my objective is here. So to do that, I'm requesting 905 square feet floor area to be an accepted variance. I found a little bit ironic in my architect is Dan Marshall, and 905 square feet is exactly 20%. And I said, Dan, I said, is that just a coincidence or what? I mean, he goes, it is. He goes, that's how the calculations came out. So we didn't just try to go for the max. We said, here is the structure that we're trying to build. Do your calculation. Boom. He says you need 905 square feet. So that's what I'm asking for. You guys still with me? This is where probably I'm weak, which sounds like it's probably an important area. And maybe I can dig into this part, the standard of variations, a little bit more because I've also, this morning, prepared the document that Dave emailed me on Tuesday. I kind of went through your points and have a rebuttal to that. So when I go through this quickly, you might say, Steve, you're awful weak. Yeah, maybe I am, but I haven't done this before, so bear with me. So the first one, cannot yield a reasonable return. The property was purchased at a price with the understanding from the city that Lot 14 was a buildable lot after removing the encroachments. So without the ability to sell Lot 14 as a buildable lot, I personally will experience financial loss and will not be able to move forward with the project as planned because those are the funds to do the restoration. Unique hardship. Without approval of the requested variances, I will be unable to net the financial return needed for the sale of Lot 14 and proceed with the restoration of the home on Lot 15. The character of the area, before I just read that, all the neighbors are just thrilled with me coming in and attempting to do what I'm attempting to do. As you can see, there's no opposition to this. They're just so excited, and they were disappointed as I was with the delay because of the HPC process that we went through. But everyone has been encouraging, and excited because this home pretty much has been neglected for so many years. So they're excited for someone to come in that's willing to put his money into this and try to bring it back to life. But the character of the area, approval of the variances requested will not be detrimental to public welfare, public use, homes in the vicinity, traffic, parking, flood, fire engagement, and unduly taxing of public utilities, facilities in the area. I pretty much just kind of grabbed what it said you shouldn't impact. I grabbed that from your documents. Minimum variation, both variations requested are the minimum that I need to move forward with the project, meaning that the existing setback, it's already there. I'm not trying to add anything to it. The garage addition would be inside the 12 feet variance, so it's just that section of screened porch that's existing that I'd like to not have to move property lines as David suggested and such. I'd rather not impact the value of Lot 14 with trying to mess around with property lines and such. So for those of you that aren't real familiar, I'll just quickly go through pictures of the house. That's the front elevation. That's the screen-in porch on the right that I'm talking about. That's 9.2 feet from the Lot 14 property line versus the 12-foot current zoning requirement. There's a east side elevation, which I'm not touching anything there at all. Well, I am touching it. There's a lot of painting. There's a lot of window issues. There's a lot. There's the rear elevation, and what you'll see from some of the drawings, the garage. If you see that porch off the back of the house, that I have a mouse. Yeah, this porch here actually would come off. Just this section here would come off. These are the stairs going to the basement. Every time it rains, I get water. So that's an issue for me as it sits right now. And that door is about maybe 4 feet high. So it's really odd. I think at one point it was probably a bulkhead type door and that porch didn't exist. I'm just guessing. But so this section would come off. The garage would actually come out this way to about here. And you can see because of the roof line here, I'd have to have some sort of transition room and enclosement of these stairs and then step down into the garage. So that's what I'm trying to get to, is to be able to add the garage. Remember I talked about that flat roof issue? That's this area up here. The 20-foot line is right about here. And 3 inches above is flat roof. But I have to count that as square footage, so that kind of hurts me a bit in the process. So this this rear porch here would come off. Whoops, sorry about that. This is a west side elevation showing you the screened-in porch. Again, this is that porch that would come off, and then the garage would be in this area here. This is the existing detached garage, which is about a good 50 feet from the back of the house. It's way back, tucked way back in the corner. It's literally almost on the property line of both corners of the property. There we go. This is the pool. Again, hasn't been used in years. These pictures actually make it look nicer than it is. It's not. But this pool, this fence, this is the encroachment that Dave had brought to my attention. Obviously all that would come out in the pool, and this is the garage that you can see from a distance. This is the vacant lot in relationship to the house. This is a corner lot. It's a beautiful lot. So you can see it's about 184 feet deep and 95.6 or 96 wide. It's a tad less than the existing house lot. Lot 15 is 100 foot wide and also 184 feet deep. Can you see that, or should I blow it up? What I'm showing here is the relationship between Lot 14 and Lot 15 as it sits today. And you can see somewhat shaded areas are the areas that would be removed prior to adding on the garage. Again, the driveway's here, you come in, and you'd enter the garage like this. This is a better look of the plan. This is all existing. All this here is all existing. And this is the garage with that transition room that I mentioned. So you can bring it together with the house. Otherwise, you can't just slap a garage side to that house based on the roof lines and stuff. my architect said it just won't work, so I'm at his mercy with that. This is just showing you, Eric asked me to prepare this from a roof lines and stuff and measurements that we had to just double check, make 100% sure we had the floor area correct. So I had him go back and do this. This area right here is that flat roof that I mentioned that has to be counted, even though it's 3 inches, but it is what it is. I have a better picture of this on another slide to show you the height. You guys have this probably, but this is actually the calculations of floor area, these numbers here. Again, this is just a repeat of the 2 lots, the existing house as it sits. This is the property line right here. And this is the addition of the garage that I want to put with the driveway coming in, boom. And you won't even see this from the street. The garage, the addition, you won't even see it. And once a home is built here, you won't see it even from Hawthorne here, which is the cross street. This is what I mentioned in terms of the height of the house. This is that flat roof. This right here is the 20-foot line, and 3 inches above is the top of just a non-livable, non-usable flat roof. Now, what I was going to do here is what Dave wrote up. I was just going to give my rebuttal to what he put in here, and nothing. No offense. I mean, I got to give it my best shot. Let's see if I can blow this up though.
Zoom.
There you go. So what I was taking here was lots 14 and 15 of the Peck Brothers subdivision. This is what Dave put together. Have been held under common ownership and utilize a single zoning lot as evidenced by existing improvements. So my rebuttal to that is existing improvements were made prior to current zoning regulations. Lot 15's floor area and setbacks complied with zoning regulations at the time of these improvements. There's no evidence to my knowledge that any improvements were made under the current zoning regulations. Therefore, relying on existing improvements as evidence that lot 14 and 15 are a single zoning lot doesn't appear to line up in my view. I've asked for and have not received evidence that any permits that have been issued as a single zoning lot for this property, do they exist? And I don't think they do, and I think Dave agrees that they don't exist because there hasn't been a permit pulled on this property, other than I think a roof. I think Eric said a roof, which you don't need to determine floor area to get a permit for a roof. All right, how do I go back? There we go. See if I can get both of these at the same time. Okay. Here it said Mr. Kuhn was also informed that the remaining improvements on lot 15 would need to comply with regulations of the R1 zoning, R1 district in order for lot 14 to be considered a separate buildable lot. My complete understanding and belief was that I actually was informed of this information. I was informed of this information, but it was subsequent to when after I purchased the property. I would not have purchased the property, at least at the price that I did for sure, but probably wouldn't have purchased the property if I knew this whole single zoning lot thing and this setback issue was going to be a problem. In fact, the property was marketed as a double lot, and I even took the extra step and met with Dave and said, hey, I'm looking at buying this property, but it doesn't make sense unless I can sell off this lot. Is it a buildable lot? And my recollection of the meeting was, and he had prepared things before I even got there, and he said, you have some encroachments namely there's a patio, concrete patio, a fence, and a pool. He said, if those are removed, you got to build a buildable lot. Okay. So that's what I based, moving forward with. The next one, staff explained that lot line between the two lots could be moved to increase the size of lot 15 and decrease the size of lot 14, thereby bringing the side yard setback to the existing home into compliance and increasing the maximum allowable floor area for lot 15. So my rebuttal is just increasing the maximum floor area suggested through moving the lot lines does not accomplish the square footage needed for the garage addition, even if the maximum amount of land is taken from lot 14 for lot 15, meaning R1 zoning is you have for that area is a minimum 13,000 square foot lot. So even if I took lot 14 down to 13,000 square feet, which to me would be a huge mistake, and it still wouldn't be enough for me to do that garage addition. The side setback issue, I mean, he said, okay, move the property line, 2 feet 10 inches. Would that be the end of the world for value of lot 14? Probably not. I would prefer not to do that just because lot 14 is already more narrow than lot 15 and some of the other lots in the area. I'd rather not disrupt that if at all possible. But again, just doing that does not net me the floor area that I need in order to do the garage. I don't know if I skipped one or not, but. So, I had to put this above this one. Staff also informed the applicant that the remaining improvements on lot 15 would need to comply with the regulations of the R1 district in order for lot 14 to be considered a separate buildable lot. Nothing was brought up to the staff, by the staff whatsoever, again, my memory, during our first meeting in February with regards to a single zoning lot and a side setback. These issues were brought to my attention at a meeting after I purchased the property and was told that lot 14 was a buildable lot providing all encroachments were removed. I'm repeating myself, I apologize, but that's the lot line between lot 14 and 15 could easily be shifted a few feet to the west in order for the existing residents to comply with the side yard setback requirement. Shifting the lot line and allocating a portion of lot 14 and 15 would also increase the maximum allowable floor area. The ability to add to the existing home and sell a reconfigured lot 14 as a separate buildable zoning lot would provide reasonable return under the regulations R1 district, and doing may be accomplished without requesting variations. So again, a little bit of repeating myself, taking land from lot 14 and to give to lot 15 through the shifting of lot lines would not only lower the value of lot 14, but also would create a much more difficult lot to build on, a home that is in keeping with the neighborhood. Lot 14 is already a more challenging lot as it's a narrower corner lot and with 2 street side setbacks. And I'm sure you guys understand what all that means, but so a corner lot would be a little bit more difficult, and now if we're even reducing it more, makes it even that much more difficult. Additionally, even the maximum amount of square footage allowed, which is the 13,000 square feet size that you can have for a lot, if that was taken away from lot 14 for lot 15, even if I did that, the additional square footage needed for that garage addition, the floor area I would still fall short, I think, almost half of what I need. So that's a big issue for me there too. Almost done. Paul, am I driving okay here? Okay, here we go. The applicant could create two separate zoning lots without the requested variations by moving the lot, allocating up to 4,590 square feet of lot 14 and 15. It's surprising how much square feet of land nets you not a whole lot of additional floor area, but that's the case for me. So like mentioned, even adding the maximum square footage by taking it from lot 14, 4,590 square feet, it still wouldn't provide enough floor area for the garage addition. If I can grab all that. Did I do that one up there yet? No. The proposed addition to the existing residence would be in the rear yard and would comply with all required setbacks and lot coverage. However, lot 15 already exceeds the minimum lot size of 13,000 square feet and therefore is allowed a greater floor area than the district standard. Allowing the floor area to increase 20% beyond the maximum would not be in keeping with the floor area ratio on other properties in the vicinity. Maybe not. I believe many of the lots in the neighborhood are far larger than the 13,000 square foot minimum. And the homes in the immediate vicinity of mine on lot 15 have comparable floor areas. The variance I'm requesting would still be well within previous zoning regulations and therefore would not jeopardize the character of the neighborhood. The garage addition would be behind the house and not visible from the front. Furthermore, the detached garage would be removed. The detached garage would be removed, resulting in a more visible green space when viewing the house from the front. In my opinion, the rear garage addition on lot 15 would not jeopardize the character of the area. Next is staff says it is staff's opinion that the need for a variation could be easily avoided by shifting the lot line between lot 14 and 15 a minimum of 2.8 feet to the west. The existing screened-in porch was built under previous zoning regulations when the side setback requirement was 8 feet. The porch is 9.2 feet from the property line, which is well within the original 8 feet. Staff is suggesting that I shift an existing property line between two 1906 subdivided properties to accomplish today's setback regulations for a screened-in porch that was built 100 or so years ago under previous zoning regulations. This seems odd to me. I would assume other homes in the neighborhood built under an old zoning regulations are also not required to comply with current zoning. And maybe I don't understand the rules, but that's just kind of my read on that. Lot 14 could be reduced by up to this 4,590 square feet by taking it from lot 14 and remain a buildable zoning lot. Increasing lot 15 by 4,590 square feet would also increase the maximum allowable floor area to 4,998 square feet. The proposed floor area is 5,432 and then would exceed only the maximum by 434 square feet, approximately 9%. So even if I reduce lot by 14 by the maximum, which to me would not be in keeping with at all with the surrounding areas, I think that would just cannibalize lot 14. I would still fall significantly short of the square footage that I need for the rear garage addition that I'm looking to put in. So just to give you a couple of just quick ideas, this would be, this is if I move the property line, just move the property line over to create 13,000 square feet. This is kind of what that lot would look like. It's about 70 feet wide now at 184. That's just one option. But again, this option, which I'm not for by any means, don't think that this is what I'm thinking was possible. It doesn't get me this. It does not get me this. This is another option by moving the property line over the 2.8 or 3 feet or whatever it is, and then taking rear property, again, netting 13,000 square feet for lot 14. Again, that's maximizing how much I could basically steal lot 14 to lot 15, but it still doesn't get me this. That's it.
Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Quite a story.
I'm sorry, I took a while, I apologize.
I like to make things work for everybody. So these questions are with that in mind, trying to find a way to make it all work. And if I'm outside of the way, questions, or the kinds of questions that should be asked for this kind of a hearing, let me know. This is a learning process. You answered one of them, the amount that you were short, even with the moving of that lot line. It seems that perhaps there might be some other ways to come up with to make it work. It looked like you had a three-car garage that was planned. Two-car garage still within what would be considered reasonable for that neighborhood. That would save you, let me just throw some of these out, and they're just all ideas. The roof, the 3 inches that is causing you to lose, I think you said 175 square feet. An alteration be made to that roof? Is it such a great roof that you can't bring it down 3 inches or do something there, perhaps gain some of that? Can the porch be shrunk, which would accomplish 2 things? It would get you further from that property line and might also allow you to shift some square footage to your addition. And the other thing is, it seems that transition room is causing you to need more square footage than you would just for the garage. Is a detached garage reasonable? So all of that are things I would want to have investigated before I would think that this was an unreasonable situation as currently stands.
I could try to respond to them if I remember them. The first one, I think you mentioned, would a 2-car garage be an option, and would it fit in the things? It would get closer. I don't think it would be 100%. There would still be some whatever challenges. The problem that I have with that is when I'm done with this house, it's going to be a $1.2 to $1.5 million house. A 2-car garage would impact the value. Anybody that's going to spend that kind of money, including myself, for a house is going to expect at least a 3-car garage. So that's why I'm pushing for the three car. The transition room is really a necessity for a couple of reasons. One, it's the roof line issue. You want me to go back and kind of show you? Or
No, I
the
understand.
roof line issue is such that you can't just attach the garage to it. And the other issue is I have a basement that leaks from it. They're almost exposed stairs, but you have this door, and it's just that little porch on the back is not protecting the entrance to the basement.
So I guess my suggestion was, I understand that you have to have that transition room in order to create an attached garage, but what if this was a detached garage? Then you wouldn't need that transition
But it's
room.
still got the basement issue. I still have the basement issue of how do I deal with the water issue that I'm having without enclosing those steps going into the basement there.
Aren't there any interior steps to the basement as well?
There is, but they're super narrow. If you ever wanted to bring any furniture for storage or anything down there, you'd have to go through that rear entrance basement. The internal basement almost looks like it was an afterthought at some point, and it's literally about this wide.
You go back to the doors you
Right.
suspect were there to begin with.
The cellars.
That's the cellar basement. I had a house like that in Batavia.
Yeah.
We had the doors like that, and the very awkward, narrow, steep stairs from the inside. I think that's just how.
I mean, anything like that's
right?
possible, you're right, anything is possible, but I'm trying to improve the property, keep the character of the house itself. Obviously, I wouldn't want to change, what you're looking at. This is all in the rear, but I wanted to, based on the value, when I'm done, because I'm easily going to put on top of purchasing an easily $700,000 into this
Can I
place.
ask a question? Is this an investment property for you, or is this something that
Well,
you're gonna
it is an investment, however, I'm trying to convince my wife, she doesn't have a vision of what it's gonna be.
Okay.
So I'm trying to convince her, believe me, trust me, when I'm done with this, you'll wanna live in it.
For sure. So I applaud what you're doing. I get it. I think to me, we shouldn't overcomplicate this, in my opinion. I think that the setback, I have a hard time with the setback. And the reason for that is, you know, you said several times how you met with the city and all that. At the end of the day, it's your due diligence to know the rules. And if you don't, hire a lawyer to go and sit down and figure it out. That's my comment. So I have a hard time giving you the proper setback for 2 feet 10 inches. I would move that into lot 14. I don't have a hard time giving you variation on the addition, because in my opinion, I do agree with you, at a $1.2 to $1.5 million house, you need a 3-car garage. That to me makes sense. And I don't think anybody on this committee is about, like Mim said, we want this to work, but there's got to be a little bit of compromise. So my suggestion would be, Mr. Kuhn, is push the, to get to 12 feet, push that into lot 14, and then I would be more apt to, talk about the variation on the square footage in the back of the house.
And I appreciate that, and I think you're right. I think, I'm not so stubborn that, I gotta have both, but I think you're right on. I mean, the biggest issue is the floor area. Yes, would I prefer not have to mess with the moving a property line, but if that gets me, that saves the project still.
Correct.
Yeah, does it impact the value of lot 14? Maybe, maybe not. I'd have to, see if the current potential buyer has an issue with that. Hopefully not, because it's really not, that's not the end of the world, I don't think, that 2.8 inches.
So Dave, what's on the
Or
table
feet,
is
sorry.
we can vote for one. We have to vote for both.
Right, there are 2 variation requests. You can vote to approve one, both, deny both, mix and match. I would also say that the commission cannot grant a variation greater than what's been requested, but can grant variations less than what's been requested. That makes sense.
Mr. Kuhn, when you talk to David or whomever else you talk to on the staff, did they tell you that the lot 15 with the house, if you did no improvements to it, but other than removing the pool and the things that encroached, obviously, if you don't touch the house, it's fine, right? You can sell the lot,
No,
you can live in the house.
no,
It's
and I
only
found.
because you want to make improvements to the house.
No, not even that, I don't think. And this was.
Am I correct, David?
This is, and forgive me, yes, I missed that part of it, but it was brought to my attention through the process of having the architect draw some plans for me, that the existing house as it sits for lot 15 is non-conforming.
Correct, which many homes are, but it's only when you go to do something to it that then you have to bring
That's
it
why
up to
I'm
the
here.
standard.
Yeah.
Okay, but when
why.
you talked to him originally, and you claim that you weren't told this, were they aware that you were going to be?
No, I don't think
Redoing
that
the
came up,
existing home?
Dave, do you? I don't think that came up. I think it was, my plan was to restore lot 15, and what that meant in terms of, back in my mind, when you start looking at a property like this, you kind of go, what if I did this? What if I did that? I knew I wasn't going to add a 3rd floor, or add another bedroom, or build over the pad. I knew I wasn't going to do anything. I knew that garage was an issue, and I knew that my idea in the back of my mind was to put a garage, again, with the value of a home that I anticipated
I
probably being worth.
understand all that. I
was
just
gonna
wanted
put
to
it-
know what you were told. and
I don't think
what you told
we
them.
we didn't delve into what I was going to do with the house, other than restore it.
I think at our first meeting, the question was rather simple, of whether or not lot 14 could be a buildable lot. In that meeting, the only information staff was presented with was a plat of survey that you've all seen. So it was easy to identify the encroachments that were onto Lot 14. If you look at that platted survey, that side setback is not called out. So we kind of looked at that and said, it might meet it, it might not. But Lot 15 needs to comply with those regulations. We had no idea what the floor area was for Lot 15, so there was no way of us knowing at that time what the floor area was and that it was in violation, or not complying with the standards for Lot 15 if it was a standalone lot.
But
That
again,
that was discovered after the purchase of the property and after the architect started playing around with potential additions.
but if he moved into the house as it is today and removed the encroachments, he wouldn't have to be applying for anything, correct? Because he's moving into something that's grandfathered in.
I think that's part of the issue, is right now you have one zoning lot, so as one zoning lot, it conforms. If you look at both lots as one,
Right,
it
but by,
complies, but if you want to split that off, it no longer complies, so you're creating the nonconformity, and that's part of the reason we're here this evening.
And that discussion didn't take place, from my recollection, about it was a single zoning lot. That just did not come up. It wasn't until my architect did his thing, and he said, your house is actually non-conforming already. I'm like,
Well,
oh.
Can I ask a question?
that's-
If you said you're paying two parcels, taxes.
Right.
Why is it the same zoning if you have two parcels?
So a zoning lot does not have to coincide with the tax parcel. You can assemble multiple parcels and treat that as one zoning lot, increase your lot area, and then, you can build right over that parcel line if you own both of them.
Well, so, to Terry's point, when you met with Mr. Kuhn, if he met those nonconformings, could he sell Lot 14? Did you say anything like, yeah, if you remove this stuff, you can sell Lot 14?
What I was able to definitely identify was removal of the encroachments onto Lot 14, because that in itself is utilizing both parcels as one zoning lot. Under common ownership, a pool crossing over a property line
Okay,
would otherwise not be allowed unless you were considering it one zoning lot.
but you never said, if you remove that, you can sell Lot 14?
We said you have to remove those at a minimum, and then Lot 15 has to stand alone in compliance with the R1 zoning regulations. But
See,
we
that
did-
second
but we-
part I didn't catch at all.
We did not know that floor area was an issue at that time, because we had none of this information.
So could technically, to Terry's point, could he remove the back, sell Lot 14, and then apply for variance after he sells Lot 14 to do what he wants in the back of the house?
He would still need, if it's over in its current condition in relation to Lot 15, he would still need the variation for floor area on Lot 15.
Okay.
And I want to follow up, also make sure that I understand Terry's question, because I think the answer is not what I expected. So, as it stands right now, if he sells Lot 14 or moves the property line and it separates them, Lot 15, the house that stands right now, has to be brought into compliance regardless. It's no longer able, he couldn't move into it and just,
Sell Lot 14.
because he created a non-conforming.
Right.
So regardless, he has to do something to Lot 15 for it to be usable
Yeah.
if he doesn't keep them as a single zoning lot.
Correct.
Right.
So he's,
Here, as it tears something
screwed
out
right
or
now.
ask for a waiver on the area.
And recognizing there are previously platted lots, we do, but that happens throughout the community where people assemble previously platted lots and utilize them as one.
I'm going back to a home we had. Do you remember the people out west, and they wanted to connect their garage to their house? And in doing so, they put these plans out. Well, the house or the garage, one of the structures was already non-conforming. It had been built too close, whether they got a variance, however it happened. So they said, well, now you're adding on to the house, so it's so it's non-conforming. Not the part you're adding on to it, but the part that's already there. So that's why they wouldn't grant them, they wouldn't allow them to add the connector on. So I don't understand. It doesn't make sense to me if he takes the things off that are encroaching. I mean, I understand that and he didn't touch it, and he just moved into it, I think he should be able to live in it. Now, if he wants to add on to it, then I understand, but, you know, there are all kinds of people living in non-conforming houses, and because it is 2 lots, and he is paying I don't, you know, he should have been given some indication by the city or a realtor or someone that this was, in our eyes, 1 lot. And I don't think he was given
I believe he
that
absolutely
indication.
was when we met and we
The
discussed.
second time, David, the second time.
Can I please finish, Steve? When we met and discussed lots 14 and 15 together, you have encroachments that cross over the property line. That is obvious on the plat of survey. You have a swimming pool that crosses over the
understand
property line. That is using 2 parcels, 2 lots, or whatever you want to call them, as one zoning lot. The zoning regulations that are in place, yes, we have non-conforming provisions that allow you to continue to use a non-conforming building, to add on to a non-conforming building. But the regulations that are in place are intended to guide your development in the future. So you don't want to create nonconformities. In this case, we have a home that has a floor area in proportion to its lot size that complies. The city has pretty unique floor area requirements in these older parts of town where the bulk of your house is controlled by the size of your lot. And the idea there is not to have, you know, mansions or McMansions on very small lots dwarfing your neighbor's properties. So that's kind of the rationale behind the regulations we have. And in this case, you're reducing the lot size, but keeping the floor area. So you're kind of going counter to the established zoning regulations. I understand that it doesn't seem intuitive that you have a previously platted lot with a house on it. Why can't it stay? But it really is because it's been combined with this other lot over time that's driving it.
I understand, you know, I understand that we don't want mega mansions, and I understand why these rules are in place. What I'm trying to get to the bottom of here is what he knew and when he knew it. Because I think it's unfair if he was never, you know, if it was never understood to him that, you know, he was going to have to, you know, comply on the existing home as well as the, you know, other than taking off the encroachments. And it just, you know, I don't know how we get to the bottom of that, but if in fact he was told, all you have to do is remove the pool, the fence, the porch, and the things that are crossing that line, and it's sellable, then, I don't know.
Then he wasn't told the part about the problem that would develop on the other lot. But from what you're saying, David, the problem is you didn't have the information to know that he would be creating or did you know that he would be creating a non-conforming use of?
We had no information on
You
floor
didn't
area
know
at
that, so
time.
you couldn't tell him that.
And
But he did come to you with the specific request of, I want to sell this lot.
he made it clear that his intent was to split the lot off.
That's all purpose of the meeting.
And what do I need to do that?
But if he had
So-
provided the square footage of the house, then David would be able to make the calculation and seeing that he would create a non-conforming use
Absolutely.
by splitting it. He didn't know that, he didn't have that information. So does it fall back to Mr. Kuhn to have provided enough information for David to have told him the whole story? Or was he not given, I mean, that's the debate here, is who's responsible for this mismatch?
See, what I didn't know was, I didn't know what I didn't know, if that makes any sense. I didn't know what it meant at the time, a single zoning lot. I had to have David explain, what do you mean single zoning lot? What does that mean? So that, the idea of removing the encroachments, it was never brought up in the first meeting that, you know, because these encroachments are further into, you know, they're actually, I don't think, cross into lot 14. I think they're like too close to the property line or something, but they're, or maybe the pool does a bit. But it never came up saying that these encroachments, you should be concerned, Steve, that this might be a single zoning lot. That was never brought up, because the first I heard was when I came to him with the plans for the garage saying, hey, my architect is telling me that the house existing is not compliant, it's not conforming, but I want to do this garage, so it's still not going to be, it's still going to be non-conforming, but here's the design, how can I make this work? And that's the first time I heard that, well, it's a single zoning lot. I'm like, what does that mean? So I would have thought maybe when he was saying the encroachments, that I would have been warned and then been able to identify what it meant, and I could have explored a little bit further. Now, yeah, maybe I should have, again, I didn't know what I should have asked at that point. I didn't know. I just took it as, if I move the encroachments, I'm going to be able to sell this lot off. And that was always my plan. So I was throwing a big curve when I found out that there was more to it than that.
I'm assuming this is not the first time you've gone through this, right? Like, when people say, hey, I want to buy this property and want to try to divide it,
Right.
you kind of know what to tell them and stuff like that.
Absolutely, and we write verification letters upon request of, certifying that it is a buildable lot based on the information we've reviewed. That wasn't requested in this case, we didn't provide that in this case. I think we're not talking about a second meeting that we had after you purchased the property and you did discover that there was some issues with the floor area. In those discussions, you did not seem surprised that you were over on the floor area, and we tried to problem solve. We talked about moving lot lines. We tried to talk about adding area to it. We tried to problem solve there, and
Well, trust me, I was surprised, but I wanted to work with you. I did not want to be confrontational.
okay, and I'm not trying to assign blame to the situation at all. We are where we are. Yeah, I mean, to your point, John, I think there's a due diligence when you're purchasing property. And once an architect got involved and we had the information, we were easily able to identify the issues that we needed to overcome. But that was done after the purchase of the property.
So, okay. So just for my gratification, moving forward, 2 weeks from now, if someone comes to you and says, are you going to tell that homeowner or that potential, hey, get an architect and figure out, because this is a rule? I mean, is that something that you feel that you should do moving forward?
I mean, we try to provide the best guidance we can in every situation.
And I'm not, again, I'm not assigning blame, but I mean, this is a good example of just, hey, I get the fact that you probably didn't know. But, I mean, I had the same thing with my property. I had to go to the city and say, hey, can I divide this lot? And I got, Chuck Lencioni wrote me a letter saying, yeah, you can divide the lot.
Right.
But I guess my point is will you guys in the future say, you and Eric say, hey, just make sure you measure the current property so that you're not over? Is that something that you guys are going to do, or?
I mean, I recall in that meeting saying I can't verify this setback based on this platted survey.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to identify the issues based on the information provided. Not knowing the property, I had no way of knowing if it was even potentially over on floor area, so I'm not sure that I called that to
Gotcha.
light. Right.
Well, here's the other problem going forward. He's fortunate in the fact that he can move the lot line, even though he doesn't want to, 2 feet or 3 feet or whatever it is, and be within 9% of what he needs to be, given all his additions and everything. But what happens to the person who has 2 lots, and then they go to do this, and the only way to actually sell that other lot is to tear a part off of their existing home or to rip their existing home down? I mean, I think it needs to be made clear. I feel like I'm somewhat familiar with this kind of thing, and this whole single lot thing, it comes kind of as a shock to me too. I mean, I think he should have been informed immediately. This is what this is what it means. Go back home, check your square footage and everything, and come back to me before you buy this lot. I just don't, I think it was kind of I don't know. It's surprising to me that it is the way it is.
Yes, Michael.
Yeah, I don't disagree with John or David regarding the due diligence, and that's, that is a buyer's responsibility to make sure they've done the proper due diligence. But it sounds like information was exchanged at the points that they discovered it or it became available, in this case. One question I just want to go back regarding if the home had this been, let's say, 2 lots, and the home had been non-conforming, could the second lot then still be sold? Or would there have to be adjustments made to the existing house?
So I'm trying to follow the question.
It's
because
Terry,
if-
the same, it's Terry's question earlier, right?
Yeah, instead of.
Yeah, and I guess I wasn't clear on the answer, so,
I guess you wouldn't have the nonconformities if they were truly two separate zoning lots. You wouldn't have these encroachments. I guess I'm not understanding the question. Because the two lots are considered one zoning lot, that's why you have the nonconformity to split them apart. If they were separate lots and one was not conforming in relation to that lot, but they were under common ownership, it probably wouldn't be non-conforming if you consider both pieces of property. Does that make sense? There's not a setback issue today because he has all the property all the way to Hawthorne Lane. He's got 15-foot setback instead of a 9-foot setback.
right. I guess what I'm saying is but had it been two lots all along, and the existing house on lot 15 had been there for as long as it had in that condition, if you were to try to sell lot 14, would any changes have to be made to 15 and to the house on lot 15?
Yes, because that would create the nonconformity
Well, no,
by
not
dividing
if-
it off.
Not if they were never made into this one lot, if they were always two separate lots.
That's what I'm saying. If they were always two separate lots,
They
then
are
they
two
are.
separate lots.
two separate,
Just utilize it.
Actually, are.
utilize as two separate lots, I
That's
guess.
the
what I'm-
issue.
what
Yes,
I'm
if they were
saying.
always two separate zoning lots under different ownership, then there would be no need to divide it
Yes,
off.
I see. If you're a different ownership, that's
Right.
different.
Right.
Like if it's something 30 years ago, that the people that owned it, two different people owned those two lots, then yeah, this could, lot 15 could go on without anything. Yeah.
That's what I was asking.
I'm just looking for a way forward to get this thing cleaned up. So what I'm not clear is if we move the lot line so that we get a 13,000 square foot lot on 14, that you're knowingly still in non-conformance. That's
Yeah,
the issue I have a problem with. I don't know how to do that because if
moving
you go
lot-
ahead and plot it, you're still, you're now officially, I don't even know if we can even allow that. Can we allow them to divide a piece of property knowing that these going to create a non-conforming
Not
lot?
without the variation, that's why we're here. Right.
So that's the crux of the matter, because I think in general, I'm having a hard time with the hardship here because, outside of just who said what, where, but in terms of the physical capability of you making some modifications in your plan that could still get us very, very, if not very close to conformity. So I'm not willing to just go in and say, yeah, just go ahead and do what you want to do, because you do have some flexibility here to provide some consideration to what the zoning ordinance says. Yes, Brad?
Could you maybe just explain a little more in depth why you're so opposed to moving the lot line?
Well, I'm not opposed to, is it John? To what John suggested. It's not preferred, but it's from a compromise standpoint. If you said, hey, we're not going to agree to the side setback variance, but we'll agree to the floor area. Again, it's not preferred, but I could work with that. I could work with that. Because I think taking 2 feet, 8 inches, or whatever it is, 2 feet, or 3 feet, let's say, and just moving it over, I don't think would really impact the value and the keeping with the neighborhood of lot 14. Taking 3 feet off, I don't think is the end of the world. Now, if moving the lot lines, that requires that lot to go all the way down to 13,000 square feet, which is the minimum for the area, I think would have a huge impact to the value of the property, and I don't think it would be in keeping at all with the surrounding homes. all the homes in that area are probably at least 17, right in this immediate area, at least 17,000 square feet up to well over 20. So sticking a little bitty lot on a corner that has two front elevation setbacks because of the corner, I think is a mistake, and I wouldn't recommend it. But if you said, hey, from a compromise standpoint, we're not going to approve the side setback as is, you're going to have to move the property line if you want to move forward, but we are going to grant you the ability on the floor area so that you can do this garage at the back of the house. I'd say, okay, it's not what I want 100%, but it allows me to at least move, because it doesn't impact, I don't think it impacts the value of Lot 14. And I think it's a huge aesthetic standpoint, too. I think you don't want me to even look at bringing it down to 13,000 square feet. And even if I did bring Lot 14 to 13,000 square feet, it's still not enough. It doesn't give me enough floor area to do what I'm asking for. It still brings me short by
It gets you
about
within
400.
9%.
Yeah.
Then you're asking for a 9% variance, which is reasonable.
Yep.
That's
We minimize
the thing,
the
it
amount
gets
of
to
variance.
But it doesn't,
there.
it doesn't
I think
accomplish
If you're willing
me.
to cut that down to 13,000, we're willing to probably say, hey, we'll, grant this variance without you having to come back here again. But if you're gonna, come back and, want to cut it, and I don't know.
I just think it's a huge mistake to cut the property down. And again, it doesn't get me what I want anyway on the floor area. It just doesn't get me there. 9% variance on floor area just doesn't get me.
No, if it says right here, they've done the calculation, if you reduce that Lot 14 by 4,590 square feet, which makes it a 13,000 square foot lot, then the proposed floor area of 5432, which is what you're asking for, would only exceed the maximum by 434 square feet, which is approximately 9%.
So it exceeds it, right? So it's saying that,
Right, but we could grant you,
For a 9% variance instead of a 20%, which is more palatable for us. I have a question for David and Paul, though, because I hear your point about making that lot too small, and then is that out of character? Because then we're creating something that violates one of these four standards, possibly, if that's the case. I would personally have to go back out and look at it and think about all that. I don't have that clear a picture of all the different houses and all that, but you guys probably do. I would value your thoughts on whether or not going to a 13,000 square foot lot is creating something that will be out of character and detrimental to the rest of the neighborhood.
It's hard to say. I think if you look on the maps on page 3 of your report, you could see that the parcel sizes really are kind of all over the board in this area. The property immediately to the east is probably of a similar size, a little bit larger. Across the street, you've got what looks like, again, 2 lots that were consolidated into one. But then to the east of those across the street, you have
Small ones.
much shallower depth of the lots.
That's true.
And then kitty corner, on Peck and Hawthorne, you've got some smaller R1 lots that are probably right in that 13,000 square foot range.
And then you had that one drawing, Mr. Kuhn, that showed an alternative to just moving the lot line. You created kind of an L, yeah. And perhaps because that leaves the street frontage alone, that would overcome some of that concern about creating something that doesn't look right in the neighborhood, because then your street frontage is still pretty good.
it's still a lot smaller house that would be able to be built there in
Well, I'm
comparison.
not concerned about the size of the house. I don't think we've ever had a problem with somebody building a house that was smaller. It's usually been the other way around, is someone going to build something that's too big.
Well, I'm just saying in keeping with the other surrounding homes.
as David pointed out, there are plenty of small lots, and sometimes people want to build a small home, but,
Dave, can I ask a question? I'm trying to understand, how do we get to 13,000? By setback of 2 feet 10 inches?
No, 13,000 is the minimum lot area requirement in the zoning district.
Okay,
So that would be the smallest lot 14 could become and be a buildable zoning lot under those regulations. So it's allocating as much as you can to lot 15. to reduce the amount of variations needed, not just by the 3 feet, but by the entire southern portion that's not striped as well.
So in that picture, though, lot 14 would have all that property behind the stripes, right?
Well, that would be part of Lot 15,
It would?
yes.
That gives him more buildable area on lot 15 then, more floor area to work with. Even though it's
Okay,
not
so
usable.
let me ask you this. What if you just give that back area to lot 14? Now what do you got?
You're gaining, I just did that, you're not gaining much at all, because you're 3 feet over, if we move the lot line 3 feet over.
Right here, yeah.
You're gaining 3 by 184, you wind up gaining like 65 square feet.
Wait. In that picture right there,
Bring this right.
the minimum is 13,000. So the area behind the stripes that says lot 14, that's still lot 14?
Yeah.
It's lot 15.
That's what he would be giving. The striped area is what would remain as lot 14.
Okay, so the area behind that says lot 14 is actually lot 15.
Right.
It's part. Okay, my point is why can't that area that says lot 14 be lot 14?
Because then it's not enough square footage to.
It doesn't gain him enough square
additional
footage.
square footage.
That's why I
Show
want
the, show the
variance.
next one to him.
It's just a
the-
In order
mathematical-
to do the back portion, you'd have to, there.
That,
So how much are you moving the lot line over in that situation?
About 25 feet.
Then you're left with a rather narrow lot.
Yeah.
But
But that's 13,000 square feet, it's still not,
You could configure it however you want it. It gets you the same additional bonus on your lot 15 as long as you keep the 13,000 square feet. The shape doesn't matter.
I think I don't think I'm asking this the right way. I get the fact that 13,000 is the minimum, but for the ability for him to sell a property that is more than 13,000, why can't that area behind the 13,000 just be part of lot 14? And then we grant a variance on lot 15 for the buildable, because then it becomes more.
It's a greater request for the floor area.
It's more than
but if
20%.
that's what the
no,
commission's comfortable with.
it's actually less than 20%.
But
Yeah,
it's
it would be
more
less
than
than.
9%.
If you
You
add,
have to request.
if I move that property line over 3 feet,
Yeah,
3 feet times 184 is what?
555.
So-
You wind up gaining 65 square feet of floor area, so it
Okay.
reduces it
But it's less
by
than
a fraction.
20%.
But yeah.
Yeah.
But then that does appease the fact that you're selling more lot, right?
I'm 100% with you on that.
Yeah, but then he's still.
And I need
he's
that
asking
amount.
for a huge variance on square footage.
But I'm allowed up to
Less than
20%.
The minimum is 20%, right?
But it's already so far over that he's going to be adding even more.
The standard is that it has to be the minimum variation necessary. So the minimum, if you agree that this doesn't create a problem making it 13,000 square feet, would be to reduce lot 14 to 13,000.
In my mind,
square
it does create a problem. To me, it creates a problem with value, my ability to net the most I need, I believe, to do what I need to do to restore the house. It's a financial thing, maybe that you think of it differently, but it definitely decreases the value of that lot if I did that. The 3 feet, like I mentioned, along the whole property line, 184 feet, is something that I would be more agreeable. It's a compromise in my mind. I would rather not move the property line, but it would eliminate one of the requested variances. And it would also reduce by maybe 1% or whatever it is. Below, it would be, below 20%.
yes.
I have a
ma'am.
question. If we are to grant this without thinking in terms of kinds of things that planning commission is more likely to deal with in the past, we were concerned with precedent, and that then the next guy comes in and says, well, you didn't make him do.
We're always concerned with precedent.
Yeah, I mean, so it's the same thing here. It's
Yep.
still can cite precedents when the next guy comes in and says, well, I don't want to take it down to the minimum lot size that it could be in order to conform with the.
But don't I have the right to ask for up to 20%?
You can ask,
You
but
do,
we have to make
yes.
a decision.
But we have to, as a
Well,
commission,
I
we have to
understand,
understand
I
the
understand. So I mean,
process of-
if precedent,
Sir, we're kind of conferring
oh, I'm sorry, I
amongst
thought I was
ourselves.
involved.
You can have input after me and Mim finish our conversation. But yes, precedent's very important, and I agree. I mean, what I'm hearing from the commission is, in general, right now, is like, we're kind of not, we don't, it's already a very big structure for the lot, if you just think lot 15. And then to grant additional significant square footage is hard to do. We need to see something from the applicant to say, hey, I'm willing to work with you to get it over to a reasonable size. Making lot 14 still sellable and usable, but not making the variance so, I don't want to get in, when we're above 10%, that starts to get an already oversized structure. That starts to set precedent, or we're in trouble, yeah. Yes, Michael?
So if we're thinking about some creative solutions, and I don't know if
Yeah,
this
I
is
don't know what
possible,
the
but,
solution
you know,
is.
does this make a smaller lot 14 palatable in that configuration? Can the area to the south be granted an easement for use to, as an incentive for lot 14?
I've already
So-
granted, when I first bought the place, I anticipated putting the utilities underground. I already granted the city an easement.
So I'm saying an easement to the buyer of lot 14 to use as a driveway, something like that. The land still counts. I don't know. if
Yeah,
this-
there's
if
a lot
this
of different
works. I'm
ways
just
to
throwing
cut it.
this out as a
Yeah.
thought, but the land still counts to help your requirement and your percentage be down at the 9%, but it takes, it gives the buyer of 14 some more flexibility.
Interesting idea.
I think that opens up a lot of legalities.
Sounds complicated.
Being the purchaser of lot 14, I wouldn't go for it.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, by moving that lot line 3 feet over, we reduced the floor area request down to 18% from 20%. So it does drop it by 2%. I also wanted to just make a comment on the concern about precedent. A variation or special use or anything where we're having a public hearing and evaluating against standards is really intended to be a case-by-case basis, where you are considering the evidence that's presented to you on a case-by-case and not worrying about precedent of something that was granted 12 years ago. Does it make sense in this case? I understand that certainly other cases inform your opinions as you move forward, but it really should be a focus on the evidence as they relate to the standards in this case.
Yeah, so, in my opinion, you're gonna have to move that property line.
I'm willing to move it the 3 feet if I can get my floor area. And I could tell you that the neighbors are all behind this and everything. Otherwise, you'd have them here objecting or concerned because everyone was noticed. So it's not like you're going to get hounded by, what did you do here? What did you let them do? It's not the case. It's everyone's, encouraging.
I think the only thing I'm willing to do is a 10% variance on the square footage on lot 15. That's where I'm at.
And no setback?
Well, he's gonna,
Oh,
by
he's gonna
moving
move
the
it,
property
yes,
line, he's
that's
gonna take care of that.
Move the property line far enough.
Yeah, I think
to-
that's something I could vote on. Anything greater than that, you're not gonna get. Not my vote.
Leaning that way as well. I think it's a compromise.
And then you can do what you want as far as the garage or the transition to the garage or whatever. or the
Yeah,
moving
there's
the
other-
roof or
There's other
Design
things he can
is-
do,
Yeah.
yeah,
just,
with the final.
you can work with that in
Yeah.
whatever way you want. I'm not really sympathetic to the he said, she said thing as far as the conversation went. I feel like the applicant should have done his due diligence, legally speaking. And so to me, all that kind of doesn't really inform my decision here at all. Especially knowing that it's an investment property, kind of really makes me feel like, we got to be very careful in the amount of variance that we allow here.
Yes, Ms.
So if we were to want to suggest a 10% maximum, we can make that change now if he was interested in that? Or does he have to come back with a whole new design that reflects it?
Again, the Plan Commission's a recommending body.
Right.
I'm sorry, Planning and Zoning Commission. It's going to take me some time to get
It's
used
gonna
to
take a
this.
while.
But the Planning and Zoning Commission is a recommending body in this case. So your recommendation could be as simple as denying the requested variation for the side yard setback and recommending approval of a floor area variation not to exceed 10% of the maximum allowed. And that would be forwarded to the council for their consideration. And between now and that meeting, we could come up with all kinds of different scenarios on how that lays out in a way that optimizes the buildability of Lot 14. If you felt like you needed to see a revised plan, it's certainly within your right to continue the hearing and ask for that.
Yeah, because otherwise, we would never know
I
what we'd actually approve, but does that matter? I mean, do we have any jurisdiction to comment on his plans if it's within the 10% anyway? I mean, isn't that an
With
aesthetic
the
sort of
actual
thing?
physical improvements? No.
Yeah, no,
No, it's just
so
a by
while it'd be
right.
nice to see what he came up with, we really have no reason to make him come back here.
Right.
So based on the recommendation, he takes the setback, but he still doesn't have enough to do what he wants to do.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
So I guess I have a problem with that, in the sense that, like David said, every case is a case-by-case basis. And I personally think that there is some onus on how this whole story went down. I mean, even though I said you got to do your due diligence, I also feel that the way that, hey, if you get rid of these encroachments, you can sell the lot. And I know, Dave, that you're saying I didn't know what the square footage was. I get that, but I've dealt with the city enough where people have warned me or said to me, hey, you gotta consider this too. And I feel that this is a unique situation where this gentleman is spending a boatload of money. He's gonna pay a boatload in taxes, that if he's willing to take the 3 foot, I think that, what he's doing is, it's not in front of the house, it's not viewable by the street. I mean, that's the whole thing that we have to consider too, folks, is this a 3-car garage that is, when you drive by, you're gonna see? It's tucked in the back of the property. He's getting rid of all that junk in the back. He's gonna beautify the property. I think that's what makes Geneva very special, is the fact that people are willing to put, investments in these properties that separates us from other communities. And I have a hard time just saying, well, yeah, I mean, we'll give you this, but we're only going to give you this. So that's my view.
Well, prior to this discussion, I read this at great length the last couple days, and I was ready to, barring any other information, which I feel like I got tonight, I was ready to say, your option is to move the lot line and, as suggested, because, you knew the rules. But there is some he said, she said stuff here, and I feel like the compromise that the chairperson has recommended is reasonable, and I think it is a compromise, seeing as how we'll never know exactly what you understood and when, and, so I feel like, there are rules, and, we're here to enforce them somewhat, and I think we're, offering a compromise.
Yeah, and, I could be supportive of that as well. I mean, I'd like to obviously see this go forward and both sides work at it. I think the discussion is, and the back and forth was somewhat irrelevant as it relates to the results, so, and in considering the results. But I think I could be supportive of something that shifts the western property line and reduces the permitted variance as well.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to dominate, but one other thing we haven't really talked about is if he builds, I mean, now it's palatable because there's no one living next to him. So the 9.2 that, it currently is, but when someone builds next to them, so we have to protect the person who's going to build on this lot too. So if we keep the lot line where it is and grant him this, then we've got, this big house butting up against this other guy's. So I think that, I think we need to hold tight on the setbacks as they stand, because because there's a reason for setbacks.
Yes, Brett.
I would just wonder if we maybe should continue the public hearing here, let you come up with some designs that maybe, understanding the chairperson's recommendation and hearing that there's some support for that, but maybe you come up with a design that's 11% or 12%, and you want to give us an opportunity to look at that. I think what you're hearing here is 20% isn't going to work. Rather than closing the case on 10% and saying good luck, maybe go back with the architect and say, here's what I heard, what can we work out? And maybe it's 10, I'd hate for you to, if it's 10.5%, and give you that opportunity to maybe rework it and come present something new and see where you're at with the feedback that we gave you tonight. And
Good idea.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. I'd be fine with that.
But it is 18%, right?
Well,
It's, if you move the lot line 3 feet over,
If you just moved it.
my rough
Yeah.
calculation.
Is 18% out of the question?
In my mind, it is, yes.
Pretty far from 10. I think
I mean, 10 is, what, you just pulled 10 out, I mean,
Mr. Kuhn,
I've already-
I think that's a great idea that Bradley said. I think you should go back and just look
Yeah.
at the existing part of the house and see what else you could do. If you want the 3-car garage, what else could you possibly do to?
can you shrink the 3-car garage a little bit? I mean, do you have extra space? Yeah, I don't know. There's got to be a million ideas from an architect's point of view of how
Dan's is a pretty
to
smart
do
guy.
this,
Yeah, come on.
Dan, yeah.
Dan's a very smart guy.
Yeah.
He doesn't mix words, he tells you like it is, yeah.
So
So,
that would be my, as part of a compromise for you, is my idea here, is to give you some time to really figure out what you want to do, given the feedback that you heard
I'm just
tonight.
tired of the delays.
I bet.
I don't blame you.
If we continue the hearing, we have another meeting in 2 weeks, so it'd be the next available meeting, it'd be 2 weeks from now. If you feel like you need more time, then we could go 4 weeks from now.
I mean, I think we could take a vote tonight too, and I think we've kind of heard what that might be.
I guess from my perspective, I just don't want to cannibalize Lot 14 any more than what we've discussed into my compromise in my mind, and I'm liking what John's saying is the 3 feet, okay, I give that up. Whether there's something.
Talking about your additions, really, right? And maybe other other.
Yeah, I just have a garage, and the only addition is the garage and that transition room to attach the two. And to your point, I think earlier, what if I didn't have the transition room? Yeah, that might save a little bit, but then I still have the issue with the basement, is my concern. So believe me, it's not like, oh, great, I've been thinking about this for, almost 10 months or 8 months. It's not like I haven't tried to shrink this and move it and, yeah, could I put a 2-car garage in there? I just won't do it. I won't spend, another $700,000 in rehabbing it and put a 2-car garage on it. I just won't do it. I won't do it.
Well, I know that we're supposed to take things on a case-by-case basis, but I'll tell you from my time, which hasn't been that long, a couple of years on the zoning board, if we're talking about an 18% increase, that's not something we would have taken lightly. And the fact that you have other options, that's the problem. It's like if you were landlocked and you came in and said, this is the only way I can do this and I need this, but you have another option. You can take somewhere, you've got a whole lot there, and it's still going to be, maybe you don't go to 13, maybe you go a little more or less and try to compromise with this, but, you're asking for something that is, I know it's allowable, but it's a pretty big variance, as variances go. And you're not willing to compromise, so,
Oh,
well,
I-
30 feet is not a compromise.
So I think you have your options, so do you want us to continue the public hearing, or do you want us to vote?
so if you vote, am I hearing, what, 10% is what I'm hearing?
I'll have to,
I mean,
I'll have
there's
to
gotta
get
be
a
a
motion,
motion,
but that's
yeah.
what we're talking about.
And so if it's 10%, 10% won't work for me. It just won't. And,
All right, then you should take the extension and try to make something work and come
and
back.
if I sleep on it and think about it, and if I take the extension, and then I decide that, you know, I can't, you know, I don't want to compromise any more than that, is it done? It just doesn't, it just stops?
At the next meeting, the commission, you could just relay that to the commission, and they would make their recommendation to the council. The council has the ultimate authority to approve or deny your request.
Or I can just drop my request?
You could just withdraw it as well, if that's what you like, but, I mean, if you take the option to continue the meeting, I've been playing here with these new sketches, and
I think that doesn't hurt to do
there's
that. I mean, because
opportunities.
obviously, I'm tired, I don't know about you guys, and
We're here for you. It's no problem how long it takes, you know?
well, I'm disappointed. I think I was compromising on, you know, I think John was making a lot of sense. Because it's not like I haven't worked on these plans, thought about these plans, spent a lot of money with Dan. He's not cheap, you know, go back to him and rework it again and maybe not get what I want. I'm kind of tired of spending money. And, you know, Dave and I have had a lot of conversations and emails, and I'm just kind of tired.
And we can have, before you pull Dan in, I'm happy to meet with you. I'm no cost to you. So I'm happy to meet with you and kind of go through some of these ideas and see maybe what you bring back to Dan.
Yeah, but what I don't know is where your minds are at between, it's somewhere between 10 and 18, it sounds like. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think what Brad was saying was, we were encouraging you to go back and look at it again because we didn't want to put a hard and fast limit on it. If you go back and work with Dan and you guys arrive at something that's 12, you know, then maybe we would.
I just don't want you to think that I haven't been doing this, okay? It's like, okay, here we go again, you know, it's not like I, you know, just met with Dan and we decided this is, you know, I've been working on this for a long time.
Yeah, we appreciate that, so.
But you're clearly very thoughtful and put a lot of thought into this, and I agree with John that, you know, you're going to do good with this property, but it's just such a huge ask with the 20%, for me.
Well, it's 18 now, because I
Oh,
would
18,
agree,
sorry.
I would agree to moving the
Yeah.
property line over. I would, to me, that's a compromise.
All right, do I have a motion?
What does,
If you want to continue, that's, you know, I'll have to sleep on it too, but I don't want
I
to
think,
close the
I think you
door.
want that option,
I
that's
think
why I'm
you should
asking for a motion.
Just think about it.
yeah,
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to continue the public hearing
To a date.
This would be October 10th?
to October 10th.
That's right.
Is that enough time, Steve?
yeah,
Is that-
I don't sleep that
Is
long.
that, the date's good?
Yeah, I'll make it work.
Okay,
second,
moved and seconded. Paul?
Commissioner Rittenhouse,
Yes.
Commissioner Evans,
aye.
Commissioner Slivka,
Aye.
Commissioner DeBates,
Aye.
Commissioner Casarag,
Aye.
Chairman Stocking.
Aye.
Vote 6-0.
All right, very good. So we'll see you on the 10th.
10.
Yep. Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
So just a few items of other business, what's coming down the pipeline. We do have other business on October 10th. We have a special use request for State Street Collision on East State Street. An existing auto body repair shop that has put a small storage addition on, but it never had the required special use for the property. So requesting the special use basically to bring the property into compliance and not be in violation for this small storage addition that they've added. The other request is for Oberwise. This is kind of round 2 of Oberwise. The previous submittal had a condition of approval that they obtained a public utility easement through the frontage of the shopping center, through the detention pond property that they don't own. They were unable to secure that easement, so they're requesting that that condition of approval be dropped. Other than that, the plans remain really unchanged. And then in addition to that, if you've been tracking city business, we've had, recently we had a policy discussion on recreational cannabis and whether or not the city should entertain that as a permitted use in its various forms. The direction we received from the council on Monday night was to advance it through the Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing process and try to identify zones where it may or may not be appropriate. So we don't have a firm date on a public hearing for that, but we will let you know when that's coming up. We'll have to do some mapping exercises and figure out buffer
there
distances and.
State guidance on that?
Yeah, yes, there is. There's some separation requirements for dispensaries.
Distance from schools, that kind of thing.
There's not for that, but there's guidance
Really?
we can take from like our liquor licenses.
Oh, okay.
So that's part of the exercise for us to go through.
Figure out
and-
what the-
and work through with the commission.
The level is, okay.
We've also had some discussion on affordable housing requirements, whether or not the city should adopt an inclusionary housing ordinance, if we should just provide incentives for affordable housing. The direction we received from the council was to advance an incentive program that might consider bonuses on density, waiving of land cash fees to other taxing bodies, waiving of our permit fees or utility connection fees to make these projects more feasible in the community. So we're drafting that. Again, we don't have a firm date for that, but we will let you know as soon as we do. Those should both be coming this fall.
That would be a public hearing also.
Anytime you're providing density bonuses and things like that, we're amending the zoning ordinance, that would be a public hearing, right?
Lots of things that the public will be very interested in.
Yes.
Bigger room.
Am I missing anything, Paul?
Nope, I think those are the main ones that we have right now.
Anything going on with Orlando Pizza site?
No, that was purchased by Aldi. They demoed the site,
Oh, okay.
sodded seeded.
They just-
That's it for now.
That's it for now.
My
Stay tuned.
understanding is they have some future plans for parking potentially, and that's why they secured the property.
Okay.
But nothing in the immediate future.
About Mill Race Inn, any update on that site?
We've been working with all the different regulatory agencies, trying to get more concrete answers. So we had a productive meeting with the Geneva Park District. We had productive meetings with WBK Engineering, IDOT. Now we've submitted for a formal response from IDOT, and that takes 45 to 60 days. So we're in a bit of a hold pattern. The architect is still trying to finesse the building and address some of the concerns that were heard. But we're kind of in a hold pattern until we get that formal response from IDOT. So that'll be either probably early winter before it gets to a plan commission meeting.
Okay. I saw Dunkin' Donuts started on East Side.
Yeah, they're moving. Yeah.
That'll be interesting. That'll work. Anything else?
David, could John and I get the minutes from the Oberwise, the past, so that we can get up to speed
Oh,
on
absolutely, yeah.
them?
Good.
Yeah, that shopping center is always interesting.
Yeah, I'll send you the staff reports
Okay,
and the
perfect.
minutes,
Yeah, that's fine.
They have a lot of private covenants between the parties that makes things very complicated. Let's just put it that way. Okay,
Fair enough.
all right, thank you.
Move to adjourn.
Second.